Welcome back to Design 113 Intermediate CAD. In this video we're going to be taking a look at Lab M, and this is just a sample drawing that I pulled off the internet, so something a little bit different than what's out of the book. It's called Hopper Flange, and what we're going to do is I'm going to show you guys how to model this thing in 3D. Now up till now I've showed you how to use the box tool, the wedge tool, the cylinder tool, how to join objects, how to subtract geometry, how to add geometry, but I'm going to show you a more powerful way to use your sketches when you're modeling in 3D. So we've got all these great 2D sketching skills that we've built up in the past. So to continually use the box tool and cylinder tool and create all these shapes one at a time by using those really is too slow. So I'm going to show you guys how to sketch out a profile like this and then actually just build it in 3D. So you don't have to create this by using the box tool and filleting the edges and then doing another box tool right here to add in this geometry. So really there are better ways to do this stuff than just using those same tools that we talked about this week over and over and over. So I'm going to start by going over to AutoCAD, and this file is available for you guys in our week by week folder as a PDF, so make sure you go and download it and print it out before we start drawing. That way you'll have it, and I'm not going to flip back and forth to it, so go ahead and print it out. That way you'll have all the dimensions as we go through this. So going over to AutoCAD, remember we're going to need to start a new 3D file. So by default, AutoCAD is going to open up a file from the ACAD template. But I'm going to go to a new file, and we're going to pick the ACAD 3D template for this drawing. And then I'm going to hit Open. And then you want to make sure up here that you're not set on drafting and annotation when we're doing our 3D modeling. You want to be on 3D basics. But starting out, I'm going to show you guys how to take a profile that you've sketched and add 3D geometry to it. So for right now, we're going to go to our drafting and annotation menu, just like always. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by sketching on the top plane right here. So I'm just going to dock my toolbar, and I'm going to turn the grid off. We really don't need that grid anymore. So I'm going to go to the top of my view cube, and you may need to take this and rotate it around. And one other thing before I get started, you'll notice that if I rotate this down, I've got that horizon view in the back, which tells me I'm doing a perspective drawing right now. But I'm going to change that to a parallel projection drawing. So I'm just going to type perspective. And I'm going to set that on 0, which would mean I'm switching over to parallel projection. And once I do that, you'll see that that horizon kind of disappears, and I'm just in 3D space now. So I'm going to go to my top plane in my view cube. And I'm going to change my units over to millimeters since this is a metric drawing. So just type in units, and you're going to change right here from inches to millimeters. And now I'm just going to start by sketching out this shape. And I'm going to start by using the rectangle tool. And I'm going to create a rectangle that is 200 units wide. And 330 units tall. And you'll probably notice that you're zoomed in way too far, so you can zoom out and kind of get to where you can see that. And I'm just going to move this up here a little bit so we can see the corner better. When you get too close to the origin, it's kind of hard to see sometimes. So I'm going to move him up here a little bit, and then I'm just going to take this and offset it to the inside. And I'm going to put in an offset distance of 25 millimeters. Then I'll just select this rectangle and offset to the inside. Now I'm going to go through and put the fillet on these corners. So I'm going to come up here to my fillet tool. And remember, you always have to set up your radius first. So I'm going to type R, and I'm going to do these outside corners up here, which will have a radius of 10. And then what I can do is I can go through and fillet these one at a time, but I want to do it a little bit quicker. So I'm going to go down here and choose polyline. So type P for polyline. And now you'll notice when I pick these rectangles, it does all 4 corners at the same time. So that'll help speed things up a little bit. So I'm going to go back into my fillet tool again, and I'm going to do the inside rectangle this time. So I'll set my radius by typing R, and it should be 3. Then I'm going to use the polyline tool, so type P. And then finally I'll choose the inside rectangle, and you'll see that it fillets all 4 of those corners all at the same time. So finally I need to go in here and I need to put these tabs on that go kind of in these 4 locations. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw one of them, and then I'm going to use the mirror tool to get the other ones for free. So I'm going to sort of lay out where those need to go, and to do that I'm going to put in a couple of construction lines here. The first tab should be 120 millimeters over off of this. So I'm going to use the offset tool at 120 millimeters and just come over here to the left. And then off the top, I know that it's 54 millimeters down. So right there we have the center line of the tab, and the edge of it should extend over to here. So the next thing I'll do is I'm going to offset this line 15 units up and down. So I'm going to take this offset up 15 and offset down 15. And at this point I'm going to do a little bit of trimming to try and clean this up and see what we're working with. And now I'm going to offset this center line up 6 and down 6. And then finally I need to go in and build this circular shape here in the back. So I'm going to use my circle radius tool for that. And I'm just going to draw out a circle until it intersects with those lines. And then you'll want to make sure that the back edge is at the right location here. It should actually be a distance of 3 millimeters from here to here. So what I really need to do is move this back over 3 millimeters to the left to get it in the right location. Now I'm going to do a little bit more trimming to sort of end up with the shape that I want. So we're very close at this point. I just need to go through and fillet this and this corner right here, and those should both be a fillet with a radius of 3. So I'll set my fillet radius, and then I'm just going to go through and fillet these corners. And remember, you can hit the space bar to repeat the last command, which is really handy when you're doing these. Okay, so we've got that all built, and I could do the same thing 3 more times, but really that wouldn't make sense from a functionality standpoint and from an efficiency standpoint. So what I'm going to do is, you'll notice when I select these that it assumes that they are part of my polyline rectangle out here. So I'm just going to take this and explode it so that I can select all of this. Once I do that, I'm going to use the mirror tool. And I'm just going to choose an axis right here to mirror it around. You'll see when I do that I get it over here on the other side for free. And AutoCAD's always going to ask me if I want to erase the source objects. I do not, so I'm going to say no. I'd like to keep the original. And then I'll come up here and do just a little bit of quick trimming. I have that one for free. And then this time I'm going to select both of those. And I'm just going to mirror those both down to the bottom using my center line. And again, I'll say no, I want to keep the original. And a couple of final trimming here, and we'll be done. Okay, so there we have our shape, and if I go back to my isometric view, you can see we've got our shape all built in 3D. And the next thing we need to do now is change over to our 3D Basics modeling screen. So I'm going to change up here from drafting and annotation over to my 3D Basics, and you'll see your toolbar changes up here. And what I'm going to do is, normally if I use the extrude tool, you'll see that it doesn't really work right. What happens when I extrude is that if I select all this geometry, what it does is it assumes that these polylines have some thickness to them, and it's actually trying to extrude the polylines up and down. So that's really not what we're looking for. Instead, we're going to use this press pull tool. So when I pick the press pull tool, I'm just going to select inside this bounded area right here. And you'll see that anything that's closed in, you have an option to press pull it. So you'll want to make sure when you sketch this geometry in that everything is totally closed, or else it's not going to allow you to select it. So you need to be very careful where these intersections are, that your lines are all closed in. So once I've got those all closed in, I'm going to choose my press pull tool up here, and then I'm actually going to choose this outside ring that we created. And now you'll see that instead of doing multiple boxes and cylinders and adding and subtracting 3D geometry, you can sketch this whole thing out in 2D and then just add some thickness to it, which really will save you lots and lots of time when you're doing the 3D modeling. So all I have to do at this point is I'm going to hover up here and I'm going to type in my total thickness, which should be 12 millimeters. And you'll see that I have this finished now at the correct size. and the correct thickness, and all the geometry is good to go, and I don't have to fight with 3D modeling tools over and over and over just to get this complex shape in here. So finally, to finish out this drawing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys how to put in your hidden lines, so that when we create an ortho drawing, you don't have to figure out where those hidden lines go anymore. And to do that, we're going to need to set up a couple of view settings here. So to start with, I'm going to come up here to where it says realistic in my visual style, and I'm going to change from realistic over to hidden. And you'll see that when you do that, even though it says hidden, you really don't have these hidden lines in the back, but it does take out the shading, which is what. And then one other thing I'm going to do is, if you'll notice right now, my color is set on gray for my zero layer, and when I go to my layout tab, that does not show up very well on a white sheet of paper. So I'm going to go to my model space, and I'm going to come up here to the zero layer, and I'm going to change this from gray just by clicking on the color swatch, and I'm going to change that over to white. And make sure you choose the white up here, the index color number 7, and hit OK. And the nice thing about that now is that it shows up very nicely in my model space. I have a lot of contrast and I can see that, but now when I come over to my layout tab for my paper, AutoCAD knows that I need to see it black on my layout tab. Now going back to our model space, to actually get those hidden lines in there, there's a couple of settings we need to change. And one of them, we need to change the visual style for the obscured edges. And this is a very long AutoCAD command, but you're going to type in VS obscured edges. And you'll see it pop up after you get part of it typed in. But I'm going to come down here and choose VS obscured edges, which again is for visual style obscured edges. And I'm going to pick that. And right now it's set on 0, which means that those obscured edges or those hidden edges are not being shown in my drawing. But I want them to be shown, so I'm going to go ahead and change that to 1 to turn those on. And you'll notice when I do that all the hidden lines start to show up now in my drawing. And the next thing I want to do is I want to change this line type right here. So if you're getting a solid line right there, what you want to do is type in VS obscured line type. So I'll choose that, and then the number you have right here is going to match up to different line types. Right now yours is probably set on 1, which means that you're getting solid lines for your hidden edges, like that. If you want to change to a dashed actual hidden line type, you're going to go to VS obscured line type and run that command, and you're going to set it to number 2. Now you have a total of 12 settings here, and if you want to go through and try them all, you'll see that each number gives you a different line type, but if you want a nice dashed hidden line type, you want number 2 there. And finally, you can also change the color on this. So if you want to change to a color other than white, you can do that. And you can do that by typing in VS obscured color. And you'll notice down here it says by identity. And you have some choices here of what number you want to put in. But what these go back to is, I'm going to exit this quickly and go up here to our color menu. And whatever number you type in there for VS obscured color is going to match up to these index colors up here on your index tab. So for instance, if I wanted red, that would be an index color of 1, or if I wanted green, I would type in 3, or if I wanted them to be magenta, I would type in 6. So whatever color you type in for that VS obscured color setting is going to match up to the numbers here. Now when you print this out, you usually want those hidden lines to be lighter than your visible lines. So what I usually do is I pick a lighter color over here, like an 8 or a 9, that's not going to print out very dark. So I still get that nice shading that I'm looking for in the different line weights in between my visible lines and my hidden lines. So I'm going to try setting that color to like number 8 probably, or number 9. So I'm going to go back to VS obscured color, and I'm going to set that to number 8. And you'll see that those fade back a little bit, which is nice. And so at this point, we're ready to go ahead and go over to our paper space and finish up this drawing. So I'm going to go to my Layout tab. And once I come over to my Layout tab, you'll probably notice that the settings we just made didn't take effect in this viewport. And the reason is that this viewport was already created. Now, if you went in and made a new viewport after you had changed those settings, they would be active in this viewport. But since this one was already in existence, we're going to need to go back and change it in just a second. But the first thing I'm going to do before I do that is I'm going to put my title block in here just by inserting it. So take your title block that you created back in Lab G, and you're going to throw that onto your drawing. And you'll notice when it comes in that it's not the right size, so I'm going to insert it at 0, 0. And I'll fill this out quickly. I have one page. This will be page 1 of 1. This drawing is in millimeters. And we're going to go with a scale of like 1 to 75 on this probably, since we're doing millimeters. And for the drawing title, I'm just going to call this Lab M Hopper Flange. So I'll hit OK on that once I get that all filled out. And you'll notice once my title block comes in that it's way too big. And the reason, remember, is that we created this title block in inches back in Lab G, but now we're doing a metric drawing. So we need to take this and we need to scale it down. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get out my calculator quickly. And remember that there's 25.4 millimeters per inch, so I'm going to do 1 divided by 25.4. So we need to scale this down at a factor of about 0.03937. And if I do that, you'll see that it comes in pretty nice. So I'm going to go into AutoCAD. I'm going to select my title block, and I'm going to use a scale command. And at this point, I can probably go back to my drafting and annotation setting up here. So I'll switch back. And you may have to redock your toolbar when it does that, your command line. And I'm going to select this title block, use a scale command on it. And I'm going to choose the 0, 0 point down here as my reference point. And I'll put in 0.09 or 0.03937 as my scale factor, and once I finally get that thing scaled down, you'll see that it fits in there a lot better. So if you have a metric drawing, you can either make a new title block and scale it down inside of there, or, which would probably be the best, or you can scale it down every time you use it if you don't do that many metric drawings. So the next thing I'm going to do is kind of shrink down this viewport, and I'm going to use this for my isometric view, so I'm going to put it way up here in the corner. And I'm going to go ahead and set this up. So I'm going to double click inside there, and I'm going to make a new scale. So if I try a 1 to 100, that's probably okay. Let's go with a 1 to 100 on this. And then I'll change my border here just a little bit so it fits in there. And you'll notice when I go to plot this, just real quickly as a test, that when I plot it, it's plotting out the border on my viewports, which we don't want. So to change that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to escape out of that, and I'm going to make a new layer called Def Points. So I'm going to go in here to my Layer Properties Manager, make a new layer, and I'm just going to call it Def Points. D-E-F-P-O-I-N-T-S. And then I'll close the Layer Properties Manager, and now if I take this viewport and I throw it on that Def Points layer, you'll notice that when I go to plot now, the border does not show up, but the contents of the title block do. So that's really what we're looking for. So at this point, what I'm going to do is take this and copy it a couple of times so we have some more viewports. So I'm going to copy it down here and over to here. And on this drawing, we really don't need a front, right, and top view. We can get away with like a front view and a top view. So what I'm going to do is go inside of my viewport here. And actually, let's make this a little bit bigger first. And I'm just going to go to a top view and rotate this around. And we could do 1 to 100. That's a little bit small, so let's try and make it a little bit larger. I'm going to go in here and set up a custom scale. So I'm going to double-click this viewport. And if you come down to your scale menu, you can set up custom. I'm going to try like a 1 to 75. So I'm going to add a new scale. And I'll say I want to call it 1 to 75, so it's going to be 1 paper unit equal to 75 drawing units. So I'll hit OK, and then I'm going to move it on down in the list here, so I'm going to hit the Move Down button until it comes all the way down here to where it should be, and then hit OK. And now if I come into my list, you'll see that I have 1 to 75 in there, and that's going to work out a little bit better. It'll give us a little bit more viewing area. So I'll stretch out this viewport so we can see it. And again, you want to make sure your viewpoints are on that Def Points layer. so that they don't print out. You only see what's inside of them. And then here I'm going to set up kind of a top view of this thing, just using my view cube. And these can be kind of frustrating sometimes, so just kind of move it around and rotate it until you get what you want and you're happy with it. And you may have to go back in here and fix your scale again. So I'm going to set this to be 1 to 75. And then you always want to make sure that your views are lined up. So make sure you get these aligned top to top and side to side. And then this one I can shrink down quite a bit. So let's shrink this down. And then I'll just move it down a little bit. That looks pretty good. And the next thing we have to do really to finish this up is we need to set up some of our visual styles here. So for my isometric views, I really like to go with a more realistic view so somebody can see what this looks like when it's done. So I'm going to double click this viewport, and I'm going to go back to my 3D Basics menu. And I'm going to change from hidden over here to my shades of gray setting. So I'll pick that and then deactivate it. And then for our viewport here, we want to set up these to have hidden lines. So remember, I'm going to double click inside this one. I'm going to type in VS Obscured Edges. I'm going to set that to be 1 to turn on. And you'll see my hidden lines show up right here, which is good. That's what we want. And I could do the same thing down here, but we know we're not really going to have any hidden edges, so it doesn't make much sense. And now let's do a final test on this drawing to see what it's going to look like when we print it out. And you may have to change your paper size. Remember to expanded A. So if I do ANSI full bleed A, that should be what we're looking for. There we go. So that's what your drawing would look like when you print it out once you're done with it. And if you wanted to, you could go in and add some dimensions on here, but for what we're doing, I just want you guys to set up your page here. So practice drawing in 3D, model this up, throw it into a page view with your title block, set up your front view, your top view, and your isometric view, and then go ahead and save that as an AutoCAD file, and that's what you're going to upload for LabM to Blackboard. So that's some extra drawing setup tips, some 3D modeling tips to help speed things up a little bit and use the power of your 2D sketching skills that you already have in AutoCAD. So give this a try on your own. Let me know if you have any questions, and good luck, and we'll see you next time.